All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel again. Thank y'all so much for coming over. I'm just going around looking at uh you know reactions from videos I was watching of people who were giving updates on the trial, like TMZ. I'm just wanting to know what their reaction is to the news of you know the verdict. Uh the Diddy trial verdict bombshell that upset the world. Winners versus losers. This is from TMZ. Again, I have watched a lot of videos from them covering this trial. Uh, a lot of them were 50-50. Um, so I just want to hear what he has to say. Again, appreciate all the love and support. You can find the original video in the description. All right. We ain't gonna waste no more time. Let's jump right into it.
Today was a monumental loss for prosecutors in the Diddy case.
Damn.
They were, I wish there were a bigger word than the word losers, because
Jeez.
that's what they are. This case would never have been brought if the only issues were whether he transported a worker across state lines. There is no way they would have done it. I mean, you look at this case, and they had 70 Homeland Security agents at Diddy's homes in Miami and LA, and they spent a fortune putting this case together. And what did they get? A not guilty verdict on racketeering, a not guilty verdict on King as it relates to Cassie, a not guilty verdict on King as it relates to Jane. Those were the reasons why this case was brought. They said he was a racketeer. The jury said no. They said that he Cassie and coercing Cassie and Jane and forcing them into these freak-offs. The jury didn't buy it. Now again, I wasn't in the courtroom, nor were you. I mean, you got to see the witnesses, see the evidence.
I think the biggest thing too is we weren't in the bedroom. You know, um, again, I get it that they were saying some of the stuff was consensual, but like I said before, anytime someone say no, no means no. No matter how many times you guys have slept together. Uh, I just, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just gotta wait till October to really see what really is going to happen with that. How much time he's going to get. But by him saying we weren't in the courtroom, I think the biggest thing is that we weren't in the bedroom. So you can try to paint a picture. I know the jury was watching the tapes, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure it's a lot more stuff that they didn't see. You know what I mean? It just wasn't enough people testifying, I don't think, that I thought would have testified.
And the jury not only was not buying it, but now that we look at it, remember, an hour into this case, an hour into deliberations, the jury came back to the judge and said one of the jurors, juror 25, was not following jury instructions. What really stunned me about that is that it's almost like he was the holdout and everybody else felt one way, he felt another way. And they did that within an hour. And he obviously came around, it seems. And this didn't seem a difficult decision for the jury. It seems like they were pretty much in agreement on the first straw vote.
Man.
So did the prosecution prove its case? No. Yes, he was found guilty on the Mann Act, 2 counts. But again, this is an antiquated law. Let me just explain the Mann Act. That if Diddy had taken somebody from the San Fernando Valley and then brought them over the hill to a hotel in Beverly Hills, and paid them, well, that would be solicitation. Guess what? It wouldn't even be a felony case. The DA wouldn't take a case like that. It'd be a misdemeanor case that the city attorney might file. Generally, they don't. But if they do, it's 6 months, maximum a year in county jail, which they never give. And yet, we are now looking at a prosecution that got 2 convictions of putting a on an airplane and flying to where Diddy was. That's what this case ended up to be. A huge, a monumental loss for prosecutors. And I got to say that I'm going to go back to the news conference the U.S. attorney had, where the U.S. attorney spent time talking about baby oil. And when I heard him talking about baby oil, I'm just thinking, what does this have to do with a federal prosecution? Yes, it's salacious, but what does it have to do with 70 Homeland Security agents? Now, look, and I'm not saying...
You know, I do understand him on that when they were talking about the baby oil. You know, I thought they were going to lean towards, because it was rumored, there was a lot of rumors in this case. There was a lot of this and that, and a lot of it didn't even get talked about. But I remember them talking about the rumor about the baby oil possibly being laced. And I was like, that would make more sense as to why it's a lot of it. But then it came out to that he used to want it in the bathtub and wanted the baby oil heated. So I don't know, man. I just feel like there was a huge chunk of stuff that didn't come up in this case that I feel like everybody thought was going to come out, and it didn't. It just seems like a lot was missing from here, man. A lot. And it makes it, when you go and look back at all the things that were talked about, it was a lot of stuff that was repetitive, and it, yeah.
We saw the Intercontinental Hotel video, but he wasn't being prosecuted for that. And to say, and I have talked about this from the beginning, to say this dude was a racketeer, he's a bad guy. And I think a criminal. He's committed a lot of crimes along the way. But a racketeer, and again, I will say this one more time, a racketeer is somebody in organized crime. This was disorganized crime. This was a jealous, crazy, even criminal boyfriend who is so crazed that burglarize Kid Cudi's house, or maybe blow up the car and kidnap somebody and give them a lie detector test. But there's no enterprise. It's not Bad Boy Records. That's not what Bad Boy Records was doing. It was a crazed boyfriend who was doing this. That's not organized crime. And clearly, the jury saw that. And they came back unanimously on it. So what do we end up with? We end up with a case that, if it was all within one state, would have been maximum a misdemeanor in the city attorney's office. Just think about that. So now the question, what was really behind this? Maybe the prosecutors really believed in their case, but I question that news conference where, they decided it's not just that we're going to file a case against him, we're going to have a whole big news conference laying out all the evidence, talking about the salacious things like baby oil and Astroglide and whatnot. And then you got to wonder, was their motivation to seek justice, or was this, at least in part, a publicity grab? And I say that because I don't get, A, why they held a news conference, and B, why they're bringing in things like baby oil. I want to say one other thing, that, the jury saw the freak-off videos, and a lot of people thought, oh, that's going to hurt Diddy. I think it's the opposite, because that video doesn't get in the head of Cassie or Jane. They just see them, and, between looking at the video, looking at those text messages saying, When are we going to have the next freak off? I love these freak offs. It's possible for sure that there were times when they didn't, but the jury wasn't buying that he coerced them. They just weren't buying it because it's complicated when they're in long relationships with Diddy. So I'm not saying they weren't but the prosecution, to file a case like this, to spend this kind of money, to invest the resources they did, they got to know going in that there's a chance they can prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It seems this jury had no problem finding him not guilty on the main counts. Now, as for what's going to happen to him, whether he's going to get significant prison time, I don't know. I just don't think so. Because ultimately, do you put a guy in prison because he hired a worker and flew him on an airplane? Do you put him in prison for 10 years? I don't think so. Do you put him in prison for 5 years? I don't think so. Now, you could say, well, we're going to put him in prison because he's just a bad guy. But that's not what the law says. The law doesn't say you can look at a guy and say, he's just a bad guy, so we're going to throw the book at him. That's wrong. That's wrong. They did that with O.J. Simpson in case in Las Vegas. And even though I covered the O.J. Simpson murder cases, the civil and criminal, and knew he was guilty, the case was BS. And yet, the judge threw the book at him as a pound of flesh because he was found not guilty in the murder. That wasn't fair. That wasn't right. And you can't look at the guy and say, I just dislike him so much that I'm going to do what I might not do if he were a different guy. You got to apply the law fairly. And I just don't see him getting significant prison time. I may be wrong, but this Mann Act is an antiquated law. It was used for racial purposes initially.
All right. Dare I look in the comment section? You know, what he just said right there is what I was talking about as far as, you know, he's facing up to this much time, but what are they really going to give him? And, you know, I reacted to that Gene Deal video and, you know, because it had been rumored a lot. I've seen a lot of people talking about they could probably just give him probation. Look, I'm not putting nothing past none of them. I just, yeah, it couldn't be the domestic case because, you know, the whole statute of limitations. Yeah, so what does, here's a question for you guys. What does Diddy out of jail look like? Do you guys think he's going to go after people that talk bad on his name? Or do you think he's going to sell off into the sunset? Like, whoo, that was close. They almost got me. Let me get on the right track. Or is it like they thought they could get me. Nope. You know what I mean? So comment that below. What you guys think? Yeah. It's a lot. It's hard to get into the mind of people, you know, to know what they're thinking and stuff. But I don't know, man. Again, I'm just trying to watch videos of people's reaction to the verdict just because, you know, I just want to see what they think about everything. Yeah. All right. Peace out. Thanks for watching.